Hey, everybody that's joining us. Welcome to the Social Media Club event, Did COVID Change Our Behavior? My name is Eric Kratom. I'm the president of Social Media Club St. Louis. Before I introduce our guests, a little housekeeping. I'm going to kick off with a handful of questions, but we do have both the chat function and also the Q&A function here. So please, if you have a question for our speakers here, use the Q&A function. Or if you just have something you want to share with the group, I encourage you to use the chat function. And when you do that, make sure that you select the option for all attendees to see your message rather than just the panelists, so that everybody can, benefit from whatever it is that you're sharing. Another thing, next month, Social Media Club has an in-person event here in St. Louis focused on local businesses that thrived through the pandemic. So if you happen to be in the St. Louis area, then maybe you'll click on that link when I drop it into the chat here shortly. But all of that aside, before we jump into the questions and the discussion, I'll introduce our guests and let them do some shameless promotion. So first up, we have Rolanda Finch. Rolanda is the founder and executive director of It's Your Birthday, Inc., where she's responsible for strategic planning, managing the board of directors, and day-to-day operations. It's Your Birthday, Inc.'s mission is to create fun and memorable birthday experiences for children in homeless and domestic violence shelters. And having myself worked with missions, shelters, and other human services organizations for years, I know how services like this can provide a sense of normalcy and also help children to feel acknowledged and special. It's Your Birthday operates purely with volunteers and on a limited budget, and has still to date been able to provide 1,400 children with a better birthday memory in 18 shelters in Missouri and Southern Illinois. And as if that's not enough, Rolanda is also a senior program director for the Boeing Company, where she's responsible for customer and partner education. Rolanda, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Are there places people can find you or things that you would want them to know about you or your organization?
Sure. Thank you for that great introduction. I'm glad this is recorded. I love it. I'm going to steal it that's going to be my new introduction whenever someone wants to introduce me. So yes, I will put our website in the chat, but it's Your Birthday Inc. inc.org. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, Instagram. You can find us just about anywhere. We are always looking for volunteers, always looking for donations, always looking for help behind the scenes, as well as with our parties as well.
Awesome. Is there, beyond, of course, getting involved with your organization, is there a certain thing that you would recommend? Like, is the best place to follow you on Instagram, or to sign up for your email list, or to connect with you on LinkedIn, something else?
I would say all of the above. We do a really good job of Facebook. We're constantly on Facebook, putting our information out on Facebook. Instagram would be the second best place. Definitely sign up through our website to get our newsletters. We have a birthday news that comes out every month, and periodically we have other announcements that we make that come out monthly. I would also say sign up for our to be a volunteer, just so you can get the different volunteer opportunities. Some volunteer opportunities are actually at the parties. Some are, what we're looking for now is a social media person. So I would love to have someone actually help manage our social media. And so really looking for, someone, that part of the behind the scenes and helping us run the business operationally.
Awesome. Thank you. And it looks like Ashley Dodge, one of my colleagues, has been posting some links to your website, your giving page, Facebook, and Instagram. So hopefully y'all can check those out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, next up, we have Alexa Langford of the agency One and All. Alexa hails from Atlanta, Georgia, and has been with One and All for almost 14 years. She leads a team of analysts who use market research and data science to further the missions of social good organizations. Alexa's specialties are developing talent, complex multi-channel analyses, predictive modeling, and generating actionable insights for clients and programs. And having had the good fortune myself to work with Alexa in the past, I can tell you that she is without a doubt one of the most impressive and smartest people I've ever encountered. And I really do mean that. I think very highly of Alexa. Alexa, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Is there anything you want to point people to or somewhere they should go if they would like to connect with you?
Absolutely. Directly with me, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. You can search for Alexa Langford. You'll probably see me. There's not too many of us out there, for sure. And certainly our company website, One and All, we post, blogs and other interesting information. If it's okay with you, Eric, I'm going to plug a webinar that we're actually hosting tomorrow. Would love for folks that are interested to go ahead and sign up. Certainly excited about that. But yeah, I love reaching out to people. I love connecting. I'll like all of your posts. So definitely looking forward to connecting with y'all.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and I actually, since you shared the link to your webinar, I think because of LinkedIn's algorithm or something, I seem to see notifications about your webinars late. It's always like they just happened yesterday. So I don't know if it's signing up for email with One and All or if it's following One and All in a different channel, but are there other places to get notified? Because I mean, I know you've been speaking at several events over the last few months.
Yeah, definitely. Certainly we have an active Facebook page. I know that we have a Instagram that is frequently updated, and we post a ton of stuff that our clients are doing that we're interested in, which is always great to see, what other social good organizations are doing. So yeah, I would say Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram are all great places. I believe if you go to the website directly, there is an email sign up. So those are all places to get more info about One and All.
Awesome, thank you. Well, finally, we have Ted Wright of the word of mouth marketing agency Fizz. In 2015, Phil Kotler described Ted as, quote, the pioneer of modern word of mouth marketing, end quote. As the CEO of Fizz, Ted Wright has led one of the largest word of mouth marketing firms in the world since 2001. Fizz operates in 13 time zones with clients that include Coca-Cola, LVMH, JetBlue, Audi, Intel, FIFA, and many others. Besides their large company work, Fizz also has a specialty incubation practice where they grow CPG and agriculture brands. Ted has taught at the Wharton School since 2010, and in 2014, he wrote the best-selling word-of-mouth marketing book entitled Fizz. Ted, I'm guessing you probably do not recall this, but I saw you speak alongside Jay Baer at MLT Creative in Atlanta in, I think 2011 or maybe 2012.
Is that the one with the great food trucks outside?
Yep, you got it.
I relate everything back to food or alcohol, so
Well, so your talk and the case study sort of that you gave about the work that you all did on chocolate milk are easily some of the things that I go back to most often when I'm looking for inspiration for marketing and communications that are inspired or outside the box, or I don't know exactly how to describe it. And for everybody here, if you're not familiar with Fizz's work or what I just mentioned about chocolate milk, I recommend that you look up Fizz. As I just said, I saw Ted speak 10 years ago, and still to this day, I'm really impressed by that single talk. And then, of course, Ted, many of the other things that you've done since then, naturally. Ted, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Where can people go to connect with you, and or what do you want them to know?
So thank you, Eric. My mother is super proud somewhere, and she doesn't even know why. She's like, "Oh, it feels so good." So it's very easy to find us. Just Google search for Ted Wright and Fizz. We'll find more on me and word of mouth marketing that you want to know. What I really like to do is I'd like to make an announcement, which is Fizz will match the first $1,000 of anybody who makes a donation to Rolanda's charity. We're very pro birthday here. And for a long time, we have supported domestic violence shelters here in Atlanta. It's just a really awful place in somebody's life. And those are really for real lifeline. Like if they don't do that, somebody's could get hurt seriously or die. So we're in for the first grand of everybody here. And so Rolanda, you would just, if people want to drop in the chat, like, I'm in for $50 or my company will match as well. But let's see if we can raise some money today for Rolanda, who I've never met before, but I did when I saw she was coming on this. I looked up and I was like, it's your birthday. We need to be behind that. So that's how we'll start this off.
Awesome.
You're very welcome, Rolanda. And I think you're on mute again.
How about now?
There we go.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. When is your birthday?
Oh, my birthday is May the 9th.
Okay.
But my wife's birthday is in 2 days. I have to remember that, October 29th.
You better remember that.
Everybody writes that down for me.
I love it. Thank you.
The work that you do, and I think that's fantastic. Not everything always has to be about, Pampers and saving somebody. Sometimes it could just be fun, and that's the thing that keeps us going. So bravo for you, all the rest of your people. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you for that offer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I think we had your giving page was in the chat somewhere, so we'll bring that back up here in a second, just so everybody has that at the top or bottom of their chat, in a place that's easy to find. But so let's get into our discussion. And like I said, if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature, or if you just have something to say, please use the chat. First questions for Ted. And of course, this is a discussion, but directed to Ted. So Ted, specializing in word of mouth, what you do bridges online, offline, home and work conversations and more. So coming from that world, do you believe that COVID has impacted people's behavior as it relates to marketing and communications?
Oh, well, I think everybody here knows it impacted, right? You can't do a global pandemic and not have it impacted. I think, Eric, your other question is sort of, okay, we know it's true. So then the question is how? And I think for us, we've got two pieces of it. One, just broadly, we think people are more present. There just are. And I think if you break it down to what they're present about, I think there are really three categories: freedom, story, and growth. And I'm not talking about freedom like, let me wear a red hat and have people that I pay stand behind me on TV. I'm talking about real freedom, like freedom to make a choice, freedom not to have to commute, freedom to work from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. and take off from 2 to 3:30 and play with my kids for a while, or go do laundry or cruise around and then finish up my work. So I think what has happened, and this is always true in the United States, ever since like paste picante sauce came out and people are like, oh, wow, that's better. And then we went to other salsas and all the rest of that. What happens in the United States is once you know us better, we will gravitate towards that. I mean, here in St. Louis, you saw that with beer. In 1980, there were 3 beer brands that most people drank. Now those 3 beer brands still exist, but now nobody really has a dominant beer brand anymore. They have like one of 5 they pull from. So freedom, story, and growth are the 3 things that people are trying to be present about. And that's what we're seeing on this side.
Mm-hmm. And when how do you feel that impacts, whether it's word of mouth, like literally people talking to one another, or it's communications online? There's there's an attention factor. I'm not communicating, or I'm not commuting, so I don't have my eyes on the road, and also on Instagram at the same time, perhaps.
I think, Eric, it's about choice. I think people do need to be more present. And so they're more deliberative on their choice. So for example, the United States looks like they will spend more on Halloween this year than we've ever spent before. And that's, nobody mistakenly goes to Party City or Halloween Spirit. Nobody's driving by and says, oh, I found myself in Holiday Spirit. What is going on here? I'm buying a mask. This is crazy, right? You are going intentionally to do that. And so you wish to celebrate, or you wish to be a part of this thing. When pre-COVID, we were kind of, okay, my alarm went off, and your day was more scheduled because other people were putting schedule upon you. Now we have more freedom, and some people have used that freedom to great benefit for themselves, and some are just kind of figuring out, oh, how am I going to use that freedom? And all of that goes into what's going on with communications. You see people are also more free to say whatever they want on the internet. And whether or not that affects somebody or makes somebody feel bad or good or whatever, they're like, I have a right to say anything. I am free. You cannot impugn my right to do whatever, no matter, and I'm going to use a technical term here, people, no matter how much of a jackass, that's my technical term, people want to be, people feel like that is not my right, I'm free. You cannot impugn on my freedom to do that. And so that's really interesting. So what that is mean is sometimes that is, we're going to spend more money on Halloween, which is kind of ridiculous, and superfluous and not something we need to do to make the world a better place. But that's just what we're going to do. And we're handing out big bars this year, and it's another $20, but I'm just going to spend the money times 300 million people. And all of a sudden Hershey's like, yes, go.
Yeah, I think it's also just, people want an escape, right? People want to be able to think about something that's not maybe their daily grind. And I feel like this year in particular for Halloween, people are just really trying to just put their mind in a different frame, right? Like if I don't have to think about, the fact that I'm cooped up at home and all of this kind of stuff, and I just can dress my child up in the most adorable costume possible, that's going to make me happy. It's going to make her happy. And why not have a little bit of happiness while we can?
Right. And I think you're also seeing, so that was kind of the silly part, but you're also seeing, so the data on more men are taking paternity leave now than ever before. And I think the numbers are more people took paternity leave in Q1 than had done in the previous 3 years combined. So we've always had the option, but just hadn't. And again, I think, so when everybody out there is thinking about sort of what is my overall thing I'm thinking about here, it's really about what we're seeing and all the data we're seeing and the work we're doing. We're seeing is people are really valuing presence, like being present at this thing. And, somebody said the other day, people are focusing on the ball, not the scoreboard. That's really kind of an interesting, that was an interesting thought. I know. Rolando, what are you seeing down in, your worlds that you cruise around in?
Yeah, for me, I see that it's exactly that. We're looking at things that are important to us, right? We want things that are very important to us. And so when we think about, especially the work that I'm doing, birthdays are important. And so with so many people, unfortunately, through COVID, not making it to that next birthday, I think people are really realizing how important birthdays are. And so when we tell our story, to forums like this, people are really waking up and saying, wow, birthdays are important. And so right now we've seen a lot more positive reactions on what we're doing versus pre-COVID, where people were like, oh, well, that's nice. You're giving birthday, celebration to kids in shelters. But I think because of our own personal awareness of how short life is now, we are really realizing the importance of a birthday. And then combine that with imagining a kid that's in a shelter not being able to celebrate their birthday as we are our kids are being able to celebrate. So I think that whole awareness on the importance of birthday has really changed.
So an intentionality on the experience. It's that people really think that it's universally, it's helpful, it's needed, it's part of development, it's important. It might seem superficial when you think about it, but then you really dig into why is this important to a child?
Exactly. And even thinking about the importance to a child, just thinking about the importance of thinking about and going to the domestic violence shelter, the importance it is to the mom to be able to provide something like this to that child. And so, we've seen a massive increase of women, needing to go to domestic violence shelters during this time. And so now, she's in a domestic violence shelter. She's not sure where she's going to go. She's trying to keep everyone safe. And the kid is saying, but it's my birthday. because I'm a kid and that's how I think. It's my birthday. And so for us to be able to come along and say, hey, let us help you with that, that's important to our mom.
For organizations that have a real clear tie or clearer tie, I think, to an experience or to things that are about values, perhaps even quality of life. I would imagine that, as you're saying, Ted, like intentionality and presence, and as the group here is saying, with perhaps a greater realization of what's important to us, or a greater focus on, maybe a little bit less on work and more on what's valuable to me day in and day out. I would imagine then that there has been a greater opportunity to connect with people on, to connect with your audience on, like, hey, we provide, we help children feel special on their birthdays at a time in their lives when that might sort of get lost in the shuffle. But then, I don't know, for if you're from St. Louis here, if you're Anheuser-Busch or something of that nature, if you're Nike, is there a way that they should be approaching, that any other organization should be approaching their messaging, knowing how people's mindsets have changed, without those organizations coming across as pandering or being too surface level? Anyone?
So on our side of the world, story is most likely to get shared.
Mm-hmm.
It has three qualities. It is authentic, it is interesting, and it is relevant. If you like acronyms, does my story have air? So if we just think about our friends at Anheuser-Busch, so there's lots you can do about being present, and having presence in a moment. When it comes to beer, like sit down and have a beer with somebody, right? That is a different thing than sitting down and having a glass of wine with somebody. It feels different than having a cocktail with somebody. Those are three things. And what we have found, three very different things. And what we have found during the pandemic is, as face-to-face conversations, which are the best way to do word of mouth, whether it's face-to-face like this in Zoom, or it's face-to-face where, I have a mask that's covering over me, or we're 6 feet apart. As those have become more rare, everybody in America has valued those experiences more. So any brands that are out there, they're looking to, how can I really tap into this idea of how can you facilitate somebody being able to have a moment, being able to be present with somebody else or somebody's else? We have found great success with that, and our clients have found great success with that over the last couple of years.
Well, this relates a little bit to something we got close to talking about, but then sort of bridging from that topic into another one. So question for Rolanda. Whether you're a sit-down restaurant, a dentist office, or someone that's trying to make a kid's birthday special, social distancing, the lockdowns, and other pandemic precautions have had a major impact on a lot of organizations. So what has the pandemic been like for your nonprofit? And do you feel it's had any long-lasting impacts on your donors or the people you serve?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when the pandemic, we all went into lockdown last March. It's funny. I keep a board up with our parties, and I see that I had the last party date was March 4th, and then I had another one scheduled April 3rd, and there's a line through it because that didn't happen. And so what we did was we immediately started doing more of our birthday in a box. And so our birthday in a box prior to the pandemic was decoration. So the mom could say, we don't want you guys to come in. I want to give the kid my party myself. And so we would give her everything she needed to have that party. We'd give her a gift card to a restaurant, a grocery store, because we didn't want her, we don't do cake mix because we don't want her to try to make that Superman cake for that kid. And so we will make sure that she has everything she needs. And so then fast forward the pandemic, we started putting a bunch of toys in that box. And so now the kid gets this big box of just toys that, the box is all decorated, and it's just a big box of toys and gift cards and things like that. So now that's what's in that box. And so as we moved into, with the pandemic, we weren't allowed to go into the shelters. And so it was, ring the bell, here's the toy. Because again, we're in a pandemic. However, the kid still has a birthday. The kid is still in this bad place. And so we wanted to keep that happiness going with the kid. We implemented another program called the Birthday Surprise. And this is where the mom can actually go online to Amazon, pick an item for the kid, and we would have it just shipped directly from Amazon to the mom at the shelter. The mom wraps it, hands it to the kid, and says, "Happy birthday." There are a couple of shelters that have opened, and we've been able to go back and do parties lately. But for the most part, it's the birthday in the box, and it's the birthday surprise that we've seen the most of. Our donations really suffered last year, and we're slowly coming back this year, but it's been slow because a lot of donors were giving to, food banks and things like that. And so it was hard, as you talk about storytelling, it was hard for us to tell that story that, yes, food is needed. Yes, we understand people are losing their jobs. And so we're not saying that those things are no longer needed. What we are saying is that these kids still have a birthday, and they still have a need to feel normal during this very difficult time. And so I just found it personally hard to continuously tell that story to our donors.
Well, I guess related to the telling that story, if you're not able to go into a shelter or any other location where a child is, and you have the birthday in a box, you're probably getting less photos, I imagine, or less quotes or whatever it is. I mean, I don't know exactly how much you can use a photo of a child, for example, right? Unless you get some sort of clearance. But not being present there has complicated your ability to tell a story, right? And then has that, this might be too specific to your organization, but do you think that not being able to present an in-person experience through your messaging, to donors, that has made what you're offering less attractive? So you've had to, pivot your offerings, you've had to pivot the way you're telling your story?
Yeah, because typically, after a party, I would tell the story, and I would, say we had a party, we had this, here's pictures, here's everything that tells that story. So to your air, we were able to do that. But now it's more of, I can take a picture of the box, but I can't tell you how that kid reacted to the box. Every now and then the shelter will write me, the mom really liked it. We just got a note the other day that the mom cried because she realized that we had the program where she can order something from Amazon. So yes, I can share that story, but I don't have a lot of those. Just because, again, we're ringing the bell, we're dropping off the box. And so unfortunately, that's what has caused a huge change in just how I'm able to tell those stories.
Mm-hmm. And do you, Ted and Alexa, you all may have thoughts on this from your experience, but so jump in, of course, as appropriate. But Rolanda, part of what I'm wondering about is when the need is still there, and pandemic or not, and it's, I would imagine, probably even greater than it was beforehand because of stress that people are going through and financial hardships. Whatever it is that's driving them to a shelter, it's probably happening more now than it was 2 years ago. And so as you're posting to social media or writing an email or direct mail piece or whatever else your communications are, have you seen a greater or lesser response to something like well, birthday in a box is our big need.
It is, and people are responding, but not as great as when we talk about a party. Even I'll even say our volunteers, and so people will sign up to volunteer, but unfortunately, we're probably having 1 or 2, maybe at the most, parties a month now, whereas before we were having 5 and 6, and so we were utilizing about 30 volunteers a month, and now we're lucky if we use 10. And so what we are seeing is that people will sign up to volunteer, they're excited, and it's a weight game, because if you weren't available on that day, we were not going to have another party for another month. And so that's been hurting us too, just to keep our volunteers engaged. So not only donors but volunteers as well has been a strain for us, just because of, again, not being able to go in and actually have a party.
Yeah. Well, so go for it, Alexa.
I was going to say, this kind of dovetails really nicely with, raising funds for social good organizations, right? Because, a lot of them, right, are very event focused, right? Think of a local animal humane society, obviously an extremely different mission from what you're working with, but they have a big annual walk every year. And if that walk doesn't happen, then what do we do? Or, hey, you're whatever you are, if you're used to people coming into a location, seeing a thing, and then, donating or supporting in your own way, and that's not happening. Like, let's say you have a gala and the gala doesn't happen, then those funds aren't being raised. So I think, a lot of organizations which have succeeded and done really well in the pandemic, and it sounds like yours, is one of those, have been able to kind of pivot. Like, how do we take that event experience and bring it towards a digital space, right? Like, how do we make this something which is interesting, engaging, and fun for people online? And I certainly with a kid's birthday party, you don't want to like record it and you can't really play it because that's just not really appropriate. But yeah, I think it's that big pivot. It's let's take this experience and make it useful and interesting for an online audience.
Yeah, because unfortunately right now it is that box. It's that, it's the box.
Yeah.
And it's so, how do you bring out that excitement that kid is going to have? Every now and then I'll try to go and, when I drop off the box or a volunteer drops off the box, I'll say, well, is the kid here? Most of the time the kid isn't there yet, maybe it's at school or whatever. And so that's always hard because, the box stays at the front desk. And so that's not a fun story. I dropped out a box at the front desk. And so that's no fun. But I'd love to be able to explain, what happened when that kid opened that box, or, when we have those parties, or when that Amazon package came, and even that mom's reaction. So those are things that have changed for us, that we got to learn how to tell our story in a different way for those different things that we're offering.
So
I'm going to grab a box before we get off. I want you guys.
I want to, speaking for everybody, I know I want to see.
Yeah.
So let's just keep on this theme of children's birthday parties, and let's just talk about this idea that pandemic, we need to make things for a digital age. So what happened with kids' birthday parties was actually the exact opposite. Like people tried to do some digital stuff, and it was like, wah, 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 sad trombones. So some moms got together and said, what we're going to do? So everybody get in your own car, moms drive, and make this sign. We're going to drive by these people's houses, and honk the horns. Now, we saw it because some mom took a picture of it and then posted it on the gram or TikTok or wherever they posted it, and we saw it, and people were like, oh, terrific. I have a sad 7-year-old. What am I going to do? So it was. And then there are other examples, just specifically, since we have Rolanda here and can talk about kids' birthday parties. You saw that over and over and over again, where people were figuring out how to do these things face to face and in real life and in real time, because the old way wasn't going to go away. So what we did, we just improvised, because we didn't want those things to go away, because there isn't as much joy in doing that digitally. Oh, good box. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, we got a bear in there. We got just a bunch of toys. I'm not good at visual stuff here. There you go.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
kid gets this big box. And so we have people actually decorate just regular Amazon boxes, and that's what they get. So
That's
sorry.
awesome.
That is fun. So that's what I would say. I mean, the lesson to not take away from the pandemic is we're all going into the digital world. I mean, you know, Zuckerberg's running over there because people think, because he can control the metaverse, and so pesky press people can't ask obnoxious questions of him. But other than that, because we've already tried to go into the metaverse before, and it was, you know, first world or whatever that thing was, and nobody did it, and, you know, yay, no, it's bright, shiny object. But that's not what people care about. And if marketing is about selling more stuff to more people more often for more money, or birthday parties for kids is about how do I raise money to have more birthday parties more often for more children in more places, everybody is going towards the thing they love the most. And the thing they love the most is interaction where people are face to face. So it is in fact not the metaverse. Now, maybe it is for a couple of people, but there is no data. There is just, let's just talk about real facts here. There is no data. There is no study. There's no anything out there that gives the hint that this is actually something that people want. When in fact, all of the information, I mean, crazy old R.R. Donnelley, which just did, I don't know if anyone's familiar with, they're big printers. They were famous for the yellow pages back in the day. And now they've done other printing stuff. So they just came out with a study, which they called it the super surprising study, because they're doing it for something else. And what they found out was that marketers think like 4% of people, 4% of marketers say, oh, conversation between two people who know each other face to face, that's really important. When you actually ask consumers, like 36% of them have said, that is how I discover new brands. That is my number one driver for discovering new brands. So a small, tiny single-digit percentage of marketers think that, and a third of the United States says, oh no, dude, that's what I do. And the other thing they do is they go online. So those are the two things. So that's why going away from face-to-face is a bad idea if you want to be successful.
Well, Ted, I'm curious, you know, there are a lot of tactics or channels or whatever that you would employ in word of mouth marketing, but face-to-face must play a role. You know, I don't know exactly the tactics that you're using, but whether it's people involved in groups or out on the street somewhere or attending an event. So in your work, some of that must have changed as well during the pandemic.
So it changed a little bit. I mean, I think we experimented a little bit around, but, you know, just again, not to just beat a horse here, but
yeah.
Can you say beat a horse now? Probably can't say that anymore. In order not to go over the same point again and again, what we have found is that people who live in North America and in mature media markets around the world, what the pandemic has brought them to realize is that all this face-to-face interaction that they used to have, they really, when it gets taken away from them, they're like, oh, I didn't realize how important that was to me. I've got to go and figure out a way to get that.
Yeah.
I got to go and figure out a way. Pre-pandemic is like another kid's birthday you have to go to. You're like, oh. During the pandemic, you're like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get 20 moms to line up in a Whole Foods parking lot, and we're all going to spend 2 hours making signs, and we're going to drive over to Julie's house, and we're going to drive by, and she's going to wave from the window, and we're going to do all this extra work for something that used to be a hassle, and now, or it's like, I can't believe I have to do another one of these. When you have like multiple kids in a classroom, you're doing 20 or 30 parties a year that you're obligated to go to until you're like out of the 5th grade. So it's a lot. It's one every 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. Now people are spending hours prepping.
Yeah.
So what that tells us, for all you that are out there, including, you know, the great stand in line for Popeye's chicken sandwich. And that was an outdoor experience. People stood in line in their cars for an hour so they could talk to their friends about how great this chicken sandwich was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because something got taken away from us. And so we realized how much we actually truly value that.
Yeah.
As far as tactics, Eric, since you asked, we use them all. I mean, we were a part of Super Bowl ads for 2 clients last year.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is not what is the tactic? The question is whatever you're doing creating more conversation?
Yeah.
Just like Rolanda said, she wants to give the box to the person so she can have both a story to bring back and have more conversation with her donors and people who work with her and volunteers. But she also wants to talk to the mom and child and say, okay, this is what we did, and we wrapped this special, and check this out, and we know that Jose likes the bear, so we got him two, because, you know, one to sleep with and one to just kind of put over here or whatever. And, you know, and it's a thing. And then she really appreciates that. The mom really appreciates that, because then she can take that and share that story with the party attendees and everybody else. And people like, oh, I want that for my kid. And you have more demand, and these things work because people.
Yeah. Well, okay. In the interest of time, Ted, you said one magic word that brings me to a question for Alexa, which was data. So Alexa, you've run data and analytics for a big agency for years. So what have you seen in the data, whether it's your clients' data or even just anecdotally across your clients during the pandemic?
Absolutely. So I alluded to it a little bit before, but you know, a lot of clients, a lot of social good organizations, nonprofits, what have you, you know, those that really had a lot of event focus, you know, really shifted online. And you know, one thing that we try to do at One and All is kind of marry analytics with market research, right? So it's not just behavioral data. It's also, you know, how do people answer questions? What are people saying? So, you know, we find that consistently people prefer to give online. We have a running study of donors and their giving behaviors, and you know, digital is now the preferred way for people to give online. You know, certainly that comes pretty close on the heels of course, direct mail. You know, even writing checks, people still do it. I promise you. Even if we want to pretend that method is dead, it's still very much alive. Particularly when you segment by generation, those older folks, you know, those seniors, 75 and up, really are pretty heavy into, you know, giving that gift through the mail. And then third typically rounds out in person, which, you know, dovetails really well into what Ted was talking about. You know, I want to be there. I want to see the impact of what my gift is doing, right? Like, hey, if I can walk into a rescue mission and say, I know my $100 is going to support this organization, that's big. But that's what so many, you know, social good organizations lost during the pandemic, is that ability to be there face and face and have that experience. Again, alludes to what Ted was talking about. So I think that, you know, it kind of accentuated that drive towards online giving that was already happening organically, because, you know, as grandmas get on Facebook and feel real comfortable there, they're also then more likely to give an online gift, right? So it's kind of that, maybe we don't want to be in the metaverse, again, to what Ted and Rolanda were talking about, but you know, that's where people are going, particularly with the pandemic, right? Because we're all cooped up inside. So people are doom scrolling Facebook and like, oh, look, I see this ad for, you know, my local my local food bank. I know my neighbors are hurting. So we saw this, you know, in this huge bolus of new donors, particularly for social good organizations, because they saw the need. It was on the local news. It was on connected TV. It was in their Facebook feed. It was organic ads. It was everywhere. You knew the need and people really responded. And that was all digital. So we'll see organizations that had, you know, 500% digital growth year over year because they lost that event revenue and they got this whole new population of people giving online. So that's kind of the main thing that a lot of social good orgs are grappling with now. And the final thing is then, what do we do with that, right? So we have this new population of people who, you know, maybe weren't necessarily your typical food bank donor, you know, maybe they were younger, more diverse. And it's how do we communicate that storytelling? How do we communicate that impact of what we're doing and how we still need you to be involved today versus, hey, thanks for the one-time gift, right? It's how do we get them engaged and stay engaged?
Is there, with some organizations, seeing growth, you know, substantial growth in digital giving, perhaps total giving in 2020, which I think was kind of the big headlines, was that there was such an increase, and not everybody benefited, of course, but with some orgs having such a big increase in giving, Has there been a sort of regression to the mean this year, at least as far as what you've seen, Alexa?
I think it depends. To your point, every organization is different, right? We've got but out there are, let's say you're a food bank, you're probably bringing in a little bit less revenue in 21 than you were in 2020. However, it's probably still way above where 2019 was. So, if you're like a human services organization really focused on those basic needs of people, like where you can see someone struggling and that your dollar is going towards helping them, those organizations are still, some of them are still growing. Some of them are probably did bring in more in 2021 than they did in 2020. So I think it's those organizations that maybe have a less clearly defined, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs issue, that are the ones that maybe didn't see that same kind of growth. As Rolanda was saying, like, her organization, it's absolutely necessary. But some people might say, well, a food bank is providing a more basic need, so maybe that's where their dollars went. So I think it really depends on the mission of the organization and also how nimble they were in being able to change that focus, right? Are we able to jump in online and message people? Are we able to talk about the mission and the impact in a way that is, resonating with a new audience? I think it's this new audience that is just sort of, it's nebulous, it's fungible. People can analyze it and they can say, this is what we think will happen, but we're still going through it. We still don't know the answers, but in general, I think most nonprofits are still seeing a fairly positive year into 2021.
So if you...
Yeah, so last year, I'm sorry. So last year, one of the things that we did, because we did know that, we had a lot of people that were giving to the food banks specifically. And so on our 6th birthday, which is in September of last year, we said, instead of giving us a monetary donation because we knew people were hurting, we still have an Amazon wish list. And so we said, in honor of our 6th birthday, we want to collect 600 toys, to put in these birthday boxes. And so we noticed when we asked for that, people just really started giving those, sending those toys because, in their mind, they could see that, a toy, I can have fun. And, I've had some friends that said, they got their kids together, they went on the list and had the kids pick the toys for our kids. And so it became more of a fun thing to do. And so that's something that we had to think about. And we actually exceeded our goal. We got a little over 600 toys in that 1 month. So thank you. So that's, those are the type of pivots that we've had to make. Instead of, having an event or just asking for money back then, we were saying, okay, here's a list. These are things that we need. And people were buying what we needed. So
that's
Rolanda,
amazing.
you added a different layer to this than I was thinking of, but which we might want to consider as well. But like initially, my question was for any of you here, if you were to talk to an organization, we've talked about storytelling a lot. Talked about the importance of experience or being with someone, being in person with people and replacing that somehow or getting as close as we can. If you were to talk to an organization today, and say, okay, regardless of how things have gone, here's the types of things that I would recommend. Of course, it depends on what type of organization it is, but do you have a general recommendation for, like prioritize these things or maybe try this type of campaign? Just anything generally you all would recommend?
That's a tough.
I think for us,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No worries. So I guess for us, it's more of, and which is what I tell all EDs, executive directors that I talk to, is that stay true to your mission. With the pandemic last year, it was really, really challenging to stay true to the mission, meaning, there were a lot of kids that were in need of a happy birthday. And so unfortunately, we can't help all kids. And so our mission is specifically kids in domestic violence and homeless shelters. And so I would say, stay true to your mission, be ready to pivot. In our case, talk to the contacts at the shelters to understand how can you still stay true to your mission, meaning have those kids have a better birthday memory while still being able to serve those kids and help those moms. And so for us, it's a lot of conversations that we have with the shelters to say what's needed. And so, you know, we quickly understood that cake mix was not needed. And so, you know, it works better if you give them a card and say, go to Schnucks, go to Dearborn, go somewhere and buy that cake. And so for us, it was having, you know, always being in contact, having that relationship with the shelters.
For our Atlanta attendees here, Schnucks and Dearborn are local grocery stores. It was completely foreign to me when I moved here 3 years ago. So I know, coming from Atlanta, though, you all have your own brands that when I lived in Atlanta were also foreign to me.
Yeah, sometimes I'm going to the Piggly Wiggly. I'm still not sure exactly what that is, but I know that they have them here.
The Piggly Wiggly, yeah.
Piggly Wiggly on Hilton Head that has a sushi bar in it, which is the weirdest thing ever in the history of the world.
Okay.
Fresh fish right off the thing, so some guy kits down there and cuts it. But that is the statement for grocery store today, not Eric and his organization. So for us, Eric, to answer your question, you know, conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Channel, we are a channel agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of stuff on TikTok, and we do the gram, and we've been on WhatsApp because we're active in Asia, so we've been on, you know, that for a long time. There's some social media that's just in the Philippines and Malaysia that we're probably one of only 6 Anglo groups in North America that have active communities there, kind of cruising around doing things. So what you don't want to walk away from is you don't want to fetishize channel. You want to stay true to, as Rolanda said, mission. And for us, everybody's mission should always be, the question should always be, how can I create more conversations? That's it. Doesn't matter how you do it. We're going to do, believe it or not, we're going to do skywriting for a set of clients this year coming up. And we'll also do blimps. And I'm like, when's the last time? But the blimp totally works for what they're doing. And the skywriting is different. So it's puffs that kind of expand out and make letters. And so I think somebody said, oh, we should do skywriting. I'm like, what is this, 1927? And then I looked at it and I saw lots of YouTube videos on it, and people are just standing there waiting to see what the message resolves to be.
Wow.
Yes, that is what we would like. And everyone's turning each other, hey, is that really cool? Now, the 8th time we'll do it, nobody will care. Like, oh, that's the puffy letter thing. Always be about conversation.
I like it.
Well, that reminds me, we had, I spoke to Bob Hoffman. If you all aren't familiar with him, he's the ad contrarian. He's probably my favorite marketing or advertising writer out there. I spoke to him about a month ago, give or take. And one of the things that he said, and he even wrote it in a LinkedIn post just the other day, was he believes that, you know, the one of the key goals of marketing is to make a brand famous. And I think he's using the word famous as a bit of shorthand for things like get people talking about you, get people feeling like your brand or your organization is something they want to be aligned with. You know, because it makes them prestigious, or it makes them look good in front of their friends, or any number of things. And so it brings a little bit of this, Ted, what you're saying, sort of full circle for me, where, you know, like if you send a really awesome email, let's say, it can have an effect, right? You can have a direct response from an email, but unless people are sharing it or talking about it, then you're not going to get quote unquote famous from a really awesome email. You know, you have to get people to take some sort of action beyond just that direct response.
We would 100% agree. So a data-oriented example. So if you remember back to 2015, the Gangnam Style video. Okay? First video to ever watch more than 1 billion times on YouTube. 87% of the viewership, first-time viewership of that, was from one person saying to another person, hey, you have to check this out, and here's why. Of those, the vast majority of those conversations we're face to face, generally in an office. So you're screwing around your computer and you're like, oh my God, this is hilarious. You'd be like, oh, come over here. And then you had like 6 or 7 people around your workspace and they're having this discussion. So this is where we're at, right?
Yeah.
Humans have been writing for 3,500 years and have been vocalizing for over 10,000.
Yeah.
We have lots of cultural norms. We have lots of physiological norms that are guaranteed to help people communicate. None of those have anything to do with emojis or keyboards.
Yeah.
They just don't. Now, one day they will, and that'll be cool, and we'll all live in, and it's coming way faster. The singularity will happen, undoubtedly. But unless your board or your investors or your kids in the birthday thing can wait for the singularity to happen, probably best to use a thing that works now and plan for the rest of it later.
So it'll be like an SNL skit or something, the evolution of an SNL skit where instead of, what was that a few years ago, where it's hashtag everything, right? You'll be speaking in, I don't know, winky face or cry face or something. That'll just come out of your mouth.
Yes, right. That will be. Well, and of course, since we're talking about this, that's why those teenagers in Japan and South Korea invented emojis, right? Because they were basically mimicking off of faces. There's 400 things that people can communicate with their face and their hands. There's only 7 ways to communicate with somebody digitally, including cap locks, emoticons, punctuation choice, word choice.
Right. Yeah.
Just a whole lot more. And that's why people go to it. And that's why people trust it more. And it makes people more.
Yeah. Well, okay, we've run right up to the end of our time. So with this, we're going to wrap up. Oh, there was a question about the name I referenced, Bob Hoffman, the ad contrarian. Y'all can look him up. I would recommend it. If you're okay with profanity, he is hilarious. We're all adults here, I hope. So first and foremost, I want to thank our guests, Rolanda Finch of It's Your Birthday Inc., Alexa Langford of One and All, and Ted Wright of Fizz. Thank you all for your time and for joining us today and for everything you contributed. And to everybody else that joined us, thank you very much. I hope you'll join us in a future discussion. And thank you again. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.